Hey everyone, welcome to the Func Med Nation podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Noseworthy. The views and opinions of guests on this podcast are their own and may differ from my own. But as always, I try to be respectful of other people's opinions, even when we might disagree. I've got two different podcasts. I've got one that I started a couple of years ago, which is just for the general public. That one's called Inflammation Nation. And I have another one I started earlier this year for functional medicine doctors. And I, part of my career path is not just as a clinician, but touring around the country, teaching functional medicine for an organization called Apex Energetics, a gentleman by the name of Tatis Karazian. And what I'm hoping today, Maria, is I'm hoping to get something for both audiences. I'm hoping to get something just for the layperson who may or may not know much about science, although, my experience over the last 5 to 10 years is that healthcare consumers are becoming much more educated. They know so much more than they did 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think that we have to change our conversation because of that. But I'm also hoping, if you're comfortable and willing to dive into some of the science behind some of the topics that might come up today, and maybe make it a little bit more physiological and a little bit more clinical. And so I think I'm probably going to end up posting the episode on both podcasts.
Oh, well, I'm honored.
It's my honor. So one of the things that I like to do when I start out interviews with people is just kind of talk about the origin story. And I have my own story of how I got into health and wellness. And, I've discovered that most of us have a place that we used to be and the place where we are now, and some things that got us from point A to point Z. So I'm kind of interested for you, because I know you do have a little bit of a backstory, but take as long as you want, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, just kind of spin that story for us, if you don't mind.
This is kind of, people love my story because it was quite intense. But I have been on a ketogenic diet for over 26 years. It'll be 27 years in March. Because when I was a teenager, if you want to do the math, you can. I was 16 years old and I wasn't feeling well. I went to my family doctor and they told me at that visit I had something called PCOS, which is what we know now as a form of type 2 diabetes.
Sure.
I also was given 3 prescription drugs at the age of 16, one for antidepressant, one for acid reflux, and one for IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. And I looked at these prescriptions and I'm like, I don't want to take these.
Right.
And as fate had it, I had this beautiful golden retriever, but she was losing patches of her hair. And so I took her to the vet that same week. And the first question the vet asked me was, what are you feeding her? I was like, okay. I mean, my doctor told me it was nothing I was doing wrong. It was just the cards I was dealt in life. And little did they realize I worked at this coffee shop. So before school started, I would go to this coffee shop and I would make the scones and the muffins and the cinnamon rolls. And then I would go to school and then I would go back to the coffee shop once I was done with school, and whatever didn't sell, we would close about 5 o'clock. Whatever didn't sell, I got to go home with. You think I'm lying? But I would make extra cinnamon rolls that morning.
Just in case.
Just in case. Like, especially on Fridays. I knew Fridays was like a big cinnamon roll day, so I'd make a lot. But I would go home with boxes. Like, do you know Seinfeld, like the muffin top thing? Like, I would just eat muffin tops and it was awesome. But given that diagnosis, I was like, wow, there wasn't the internet back then. But doing some research into what causes PCOS, because being told you can't have your own children at 16 is kind of mind-blowing. And looking into the PCOS, it's caused by excess caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. And so I had to really look at what I was putting in my mouth and completely change it. But I never want to eat chicken breast and broccoli, and I still don't. And so I just started recreating some of my favorite things like cinnamon rolls into these, low carb, exotic, protein packed cinnamon rolls. And I just had fun creating really delicious food. And it was just for myself.
Yeah.
And, everybody thought I would fail. And I think that just made me want to do it harder, because what's interesting to me is I really want your listeners to take this home, is when you change your diet, when you try to cut out sugar and become a better person, people are triggered and they are going to try to make you fail. The closest people in your life, your mother is going to make you your favorite pie. And it's not because they don't love you. It's because they're afraid you're going to change. And little do they know you're going to change for the better. But having a little bit of stubbornness and, you know, like, I don't know. I never was the one to follow the crowd. So I kind of wanted to do the opposite all the time. So it worked for me. But I understand there are people that just want to go with the crowd and go the easy way and this and that. And people are triggered when you change, and you just have to be very strong.
And you know, and I'm certainly no psychotherapist, but it seems to me that people don't want to have the light shone, whatever that word is, on the mistakes that they're making, right? Because then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm aware this is an issue and maybe I'm responsible for, you know, taking ownership of my choices. And I that could be a subconscious thing, or I'm sure some people think it consciously, but I totally get it because I was very healthy up until a certain point in life, and then life got too busy and too complicated with marriage, 5 kids, busy clinic practice in Florida, and I just kind of lost control of things, and I didn't want to hear it. Like people would say, like, "What happened to you?" And like, I didn't want to hear it because I didn't want to take ownership of my lack of priorities and all that kind of stuff. So was it that beginning of the journey? Was that what led you to become a nutritionist? Because that's your primary background, right?
Yep, I went to school for nutrition and exercise physiology,
Mm.
and I met my husband, now husband, when I was only 17.
Mm.
And I told him that I probably can't have my own children. And he's like, let's adopt. And that was something that I always wanted to do. And so we started adopting. I was married before I could legally drink alcohol. And he was much older than I was. So we started adopting, and he lost his job. And it was such a hard time for us to like set these children aside, and it was really sad. And someone said to me, Maria, why don't you, because this was after school, when I graduated college, I became a rock climbing guide, and I made like $8 an hour because I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I was going to do. And so when he lost his job, I didn't have insurance. And if you lose job, like insurance, health insurance and all that, your adoption goes back to zero. So all that money you put into it goes back to zero. So like depression totally was, it was a hard time. And someone said, well, Maria, you're going to start a blog. What is a blog? Right? This was a long time ago. This was 15 years ago. What is a blog? And they said, you're going to write a cookbook to put your recipes in to help raise money for your adoption. I was like, oh, that's cool. This is how poor we were. Okay. I had to ride my bicycle to the library, not even a car, because we sold our cars. We had nothing. I rode my bicycle to the library to write my first book. And I am so grateful for that hardship because it gave me a reason to wake up. And now it gives me, I live very simply. Like, I don't need much. I don't even have a car, like, because I never liked I like to ride my bicycle. And I just, and now they have e-bikes. So, I mean, come on, they're super. But it just taught me like, oh, you don't really need a lot, but I don't know. I love telling my kids that story. I'm going to cry on you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. This time of year is a lot because this is when we were in Ethiopia. We did adopted them from Ethiopia. And so just the holidays are a lot. And I'm just so grateful to be their mom,
Yeah.
And I'm grateful
and I like that part of the story the best.
Yeah. And it's just, it couldn't happen without people like you, spreading the word. It really couldn't have. It couldn't have. I just know that. So.
Yeah. Well, let's transition then. That when I reached out to you, I asked if you would be willing to come on and talk about the fasting mimicking diet. And I know that you don't use that terminology. And can we talk just a little bit about your take and your understanding of Walter Longo's work and his coining of that phrase? Because I'm pretty sure that you've taken that and you have adapted it, you've changed it. And I think I understand the basics of Dr. Longo's work and how he's structured his 5-2 program. But just for people who are listening who may not have ever heard of the fasting mimicking diet, can we just kind of paint that picture as best as we can? And then we'll move into your work and how you've modified things, why you've modified things. And so we can kind of start with that and then branch out. So, and maybe a fair question, Maria, is like, where and how and why did you get connected with the idea of a fasting mimicking diet?
It would be easier if I started there
Okay.
because when my first nutritional book, not all my books are cookbooks, my first nutritional guidebook, I wrote a lot about my story. And that's actually the one that everybody loves the most. I talked about how when I started the ketogenic lifestyle, my depression went away, my acid reflux went away, like so much got better, but I didn't lose weight. I was eating way too much cheese, way too many nuts, all of that. I had to, and I just created this myself, pure protein days. And I wish I would have stuck with that term because it really was a pure protein day. It was very low in fat, no carbohydrates. It was just lean proteins. And when I would do that a few days a week, not every day, I did it a few days a week, the weight finally came off. And I set dairy aside for a while. And the weight finally came off. And so those were my pure protein days. And I had like recipes that were like pure protein bread, like things like that. And someone's like, well, that's protein sparing. I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, and so they're like, well, technically you should call it this because that's what it is. And so I just kind of went with it. But so is it really his work that I'm trying to mimic? I'm not. I'm just trying to do my own thing. And that term kind of just got piled on it. I wish I would have stuck with the name Pure Protein Days because people are very confused when they hear protein sparing. They're like, it seems like I'm sparingly eating protein. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah.
It's the opposite. You're eating a lot of protein and you're sparing it from your body. You're not going to use that muscle. You're going to lose fat. You're going to save the muscle.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate all of that. And I think that the model that you've created is very much aligned with the place that I, came to after years of trying to sort this stuff out, not just for myself, but for all the people that I work with over the years. And, just to put it out there as a reference point, and I don't want to turn this conversation into your opinion of Dr. Longo's work. That's not my intent at all. But just for some reference, Dr. Longo's work, he promotes this thing called the fasting mimicking diet. In his words, he says that going through, one of his cycles mimics about a 4-day water fast from a metabolic standpoint, like what changes. And so he has this 5 on, 2 off schedule during a week where you significantly drop calories, and that changes depending on the day that you're in for 5 days, and then you go back to eating routinely. But one of the things that strikes me about his approach is that it's very low calorie, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, periodically. What I'm not personally a huge fan of is the very, very low protein approach he takes, which I appreciate your take on this. So very low calories, very low protein, even plant-based protein in general, like avoiding red meats and all that kind of stuff. A little bit of fish is allowed, that kind of stuff. And so in his first body of work with the fasting mimicking diet, his whole point was you don't have to fast if that's troublesome or difficult for you. You can follow this protocol of 5 days of calorie and protein restriction, and then you can mimic the effects of a true water fast, right? And he equates it to do 1 cycle of this protocol and you'll get the same results as doing 4-day water fast. And if you repeat this cycle, say every month or every couple of months, then the results accumulate over a period of time.
How is he testing this?
Yeah, a lot of this, and this is one of the big issues like I've got with everyone and their mother is talking about intermittent fasting and low calories promoting longevity. And I think one of the things that people don't understand is the majority of these studies are done on fruit flies and yeast species and some animals, mostly rodent studies, and very, very few studies in the intermittent fasting, calorie restrictions, and longevity space are done on humans, right? Especially free living humans that are not confined to, like a lab setting where everything is controlled for them. And so I totally agree. So let's just kind of, I just wanted to put that out there as a reference point, because if anyone starts to do any research in Google based on our conversation today, they're probably going to come across Longo's work. And I don't want to pigeonhole you, because you're not just a one-trick pony, right? You're not just into keto, right? You have lately been speaking at carnivore conferences. You have this protein sparing modified fast, which is kind of a ketogenic style, and so you have a spectrum. And so one of the questions that I have for you, and we can go through your take on each one of these as much as you want. When we look at something like a protein sparing modified diet, which I'll have you explain what that means here in a second, and then we stack that next to ketogenic diets, and we stack that next to carnivore diets, do you see these as somewhat mutually exclusive options? It's either this or that, or do you tend to see them as I tend to do, as more stops along a spectrum that are really kind of all in the same domain? They're just different versions of.
You paused for a second, just so you know.
Okay, sorry about that. Where did I lose you?
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, they're all, I would say they're all a ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
Carnivore is a ketogenic diet.
Yes.
It's just taking it to the next level. And my family is more carnivore than anything. I do not eat protein sparing anymore because there's no need to. I don't like putting people on a protein sparing diet that only have 10 pounds to lose, because they're going to be miserably hungry. However, I work with people that are over 600 pounds. And Tyler, he was 650 pounds and he was so sick. He needed to lose the weight fast. He had a lot of energy on his body. He did not need to eat a lot of energy. And the reason I like protein sparing versus a water fast is because we know you're going to lose muscle in a water fast.
Right.
And the whole idea of autophagy, and you have to fast to get autophagy. You know what's better for that? Exercise.
I was just going to say, in fact, my wife and I had that very conversation this morning.
That's why I'm asking you, how is he testing the benefits of fasting? Because anyway, Tyler lost 100 pounds in 2 months. The best way to reverse like type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance is to shrink your fat cells and to gain or at least maintain your muscle. And at that size, he was not at the point of exercising, but even just like getting up and down from a chair, he's doing a squat with, 600 pounds. It's a lot. But I also work with people with epilepsy and seizures or Alzheimer's. I'm going to go to a ketogenic diet because higher ketones are going to keep those seizures away. However, I've had some people with seizures do better on protein sparing. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's shown that higher ketones will help keep the seizures away. However, higher ketones have never shown to have faster weight loss, ever. So if you think that you need to add fat to your diet in order to get higher ketones or take exogenous ketones in order to lose weight, no, you just have more energy in your body. Because I've been, keto for a long time. My ketones are very low. The longer you are keto, the more efficient your mitochondria are. So that's going to be lower. And I always work out in a fasted state in the morning, whether it be weightlifting, running, whatever. And so I'm using my ketones for energy. So when I finally test, they're really low, but I just used them all. It's not a bad thing, but people get really hung up on this ketone number. I just want to throw that out there. But then there's people like my husband who's he ended up with Lyme disease a long time. You'd have a whole podcast with him, dude. Like, he is a science guru. But he ended up with Lyme disease, which is not his fault. A lot of people are like, oh, just eat carnivore, it'll go away. Carnivore is great, but it's not a miracle. I want that out there. It manages his pain, but he never got rid of the Lyme. He went to many Lyme doctors. He's done every protocol, but it was always there. And he, very frustrating, but he ended up with an autoimmune called ankylosing spondylitis, where his joints basically calcify and he's like Stone Man. And he eats the carnivore diet. If he has plants, his pain level goes through the roof.
Right.
And learning about all the plants, because I remember hearing like kale was bad for you. I'm like, what? Like, come on. but learning about oxalates and all this stuff, you cannot deny the science. It is fascinating
Yeah,
that, you know, if I put a steak in front of you or a plate of kale, people think that the kale is healthier. Like that doctor you were just talking about, thinking that the steak is bad for you. No, no, no. There's 100 times more nutrients in that steak than the kale will ever have. And it doesn't have
totally
any
agree.
anti-nutrients. And that's why I like the whole plant protein. It's frustrating because people will think that that's better, especially, you know, like, you know, in California, everybody wants to be vegan, vegetarian, whatever. So they'll do like pea protein. And I'm like, do you understand that even though your package of pea protein says there's 20 grams of protein per scoop, the bioavailability of that is really maybe 10 or less. You might get 10 grams of protein per scoop. So you're going to have to eat double the amount just to get that much protein in. And
Right.
so it's frustrating because the vegan community seems to keep growing. But I love that you're out there just like preaching the truth.
Yeah, and I, you know, I know this is going to upset some people, but I'm at the point now where I won't take vegans who won't consider changing their diet. I won't take them on as personal coaching clients, right? Because they're unfortunately too difficult to help. Now, I totally respect if somebody chooses to be a vegan because of deeply held philosophy or perhaps religious views. I'm not going to try to mess with that.
You can't.
But no, so if somebody, you know, applies to become one of my clients, I actually have a question in my intake questionnaire. It says, you know, are you a vegan? And if you are you willing to consider at least starting to incorporate some animal products? And if the answer is no, then we're done.
Yeah.
We're done at that point. And again, I know it's going to upset some people to say that. And I know that, you know, there's more recent research. Stu Phillips up in Canada, in particular, he's a big strength and muscle physiology guy. He's been studying, you know, can you build muscle on a plant protein diet? Of course, you know, of course you can, but most of these are supplemented with soy protein, you know, and that in and of itself might have some individual health concerns. Like I have a feeling you and I could go down multiple bunny
Oh my
trails.
gosh, I love you.
Yeah.
We can go on forever.
So let's try to constrain things. So let's go back and let me try to capture one thought, and then I would like you to explain what the protein sparing diet is. Do you look at both carnivore and a protein sparing diet as subsets of keto or special versions of that?
Yes, yeah, subset. That's what exactly what my husband says too. And it just depends on, this is why, you know, when you work with someone, you say, what are your goals? Because what their goals are is going to drive me what the diet is going to be. You know, I think carnivore is the ultimate autoimmune protocol. I really
Mm,
believe that a dairy-free because I think you could do you know, I have a carnivore protocol that's like level 1 is just beef and salt. Like that's
yeah,
it. But you can get up to the carnivore level where you're adding butter to the steak and drinking heavy
yeah,
cream and all of that, where, you know, what it is what it is. But I do think that meat is healing for sure.
yeah. We have, I think, January is World Carnivore Month, which actually I've spoken out loud that I'm going to do carnivore for January, and so
Well,
I've
I will send you my carnivore books. Like you give me your address.
yeah.
Send
Oh,
me away.
sure. I would love that. I would appreciate it. So, all right, let's talk about what the protein sparing modified or fasting. How do you say it? It's the protein sparing modified
Modified fat.
fast,
Yeah.
modified fast.
Yeah.
Um, and is it truly a fast?
Well, to me, it's instead of water fasting.
Okay.
Um, because, you know, with water fasting, you know, look at the studies, you will lose muscle mass. And to the point where if you do extended fasting, it takes about 10 days to get that leucine to be able to absorb properly again. So you can build muscle. Like it's really fascinating. I can show you that study that we just
Well,
found.
and let's just pause there and let's talk about the leucine trigger because let's not assume that people know the
True.
importance of leucine for muscle protein synthesis. So why don't you describe the role of that as succinctly as you can?
So leucine is an amino acid, and amino acids come from protein. But leucine is a very important amino acid that comes from your diet, and you need to get 2.5 grams at a meal in order to trigger protein synthesis to build muscle. Um, Most people don't get that much, especially for breakfast if they're eating cereal.
Mm,
Um, but that's really important, especially that first meal of the day and the last meal of the day is to trigger that. But I forgot what I was saying.
Well, just describing what the leucine trigger is.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that you get at least, depending on your size, but average like 2.5 grams of leucine in order to trigger muscle protein synthesis. And when you're not eating anything, you're certainly not eating leucine, and that's
Right.
going to, cause some muscle loss. And then once you do start eating, it's going to take a few days for your body to be like, okay, now we can trigger it. But yeah, it's a really interesting study. They're cutting like palm trees down right now. It's just like right here in the window.
That's okay. We can't hear it in the background.
Okay.
So let's translate that, Maria, into something practical, because we were just talking about plant-based protein versus animal-based protein. Leucine is relatively low in comparison in plant-based foods compared to animal-based products.
Yep.
Right. And I think this is one of the challenges that people who opt for a plant-based approach they come up against. Not only is it just the digestibility of plant-based proteins, the bioavailability, it's the relative lack of leucine. And so I completely agree that if someone is going to start counting the protein they get from plants, you need that much more compared to eating animal products. And so my understanding of the numbers, and this is just simple math, is that on average, if you're trying to get about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine per feeding or per meal, that translates roughly into 30 to 40 grams of animal protein. And you'd have to go maybe to 50 grams of plant-based protein to get the same thing, assuming that you're combining your proteins to get a favorable amino acid profile.
Yep.
And so that's kind of some of the science between why many of us do prefer animal-based diets from the protein source. Okay, so what's the big deal? And I'm just trying to let the conversation flow based on what we're talking about. Like, so it's all about protein sparing. I mean, why is that? Is that the pinnacle of that whole dietary approach? Is that the point, is to keep your muscle? Does that necessarily mean that it's not about controlling things like inflammation or insulin or creating hormone balance? Like, if you were to construct a hierarchy, what is the most favorable metabolic change that happens if somebody follows a protein sparing modified fast?
You will lose fat without losing muscle, and that alone is going to reverse insulin resistance, which that is the cause of so many illnesses of people that you see. And here's the thing, like, obesity is a real problem. Like, we're in the minority now. If you look at the numbers, most people are in the obese category. It's really sad. And we're making that the norm. It's just, it's frustrating. So you have sick clients and they just want to get better. And a lot of times they need to see results in order to keep going. Otherwise they quit. Even if they feel better, like I did in the beginning, I wasn't going to quit, but I see that all the time. Like, yeah, sure, my sleep's better, my skin's better, but I didn't see the scale go down. And so they quit. Yeah. And this is very frustrating. And this is what's really frustrating about like Ozempic and all that. I know you're probably dealing with that, is that when the average person loses weight just by themselves, doing a calorie deficit, eating a special K, whatever, they're going to lose probably 30% of muscle. Most of it is going to be fat, but it's going to be about 30% muscle. When they do Ozempic or tirzepatide, whatever you want to, try, it's about 50%.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous.
If you do a protein sparing modified fast, it's as low as you're going to get. It's about 3%.
Yeah.
And what's really frustrating is eventually they're going to get off those drugs, right? Hopefully it's $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And when they get off of it, their body composition is worse because they just lost all that muscle. Their type 2 diabetes is not better. Their insulin resistance is not better. They're weaker. And here's the thing too, about the whole longevity, like is protein aging me, like mTOR and all that is aging, whatever. I don't care. I want to be 80 and running every day rather than 120 and in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny you say that because on my podcast I tend to do mini series. Like I'll take a topic and I might do 5 episodes or some have gone 12 to 15. And lately I've been talking about longevity and I made the point the other day is like don't ever let anyone tell you or convince you that eating animal protein, particularly red meat, is going to give you cancer via any mechanism, particularly by driving mTOR, right? And this is I think a huge problem in the health and wellness space is that people latch on to one part of very complex biological mechanisms, all of which have interconnected and interdependent subsystems, and they just pluck one thing out and say, okay, this is what it is, this is what it does, and how do I control that and change it? And I'm a huge advocate of having a systems-based view of human metabolism, and that's what we try to practice, what we try to teach in the seminars. But I'm kind of with you, like this whole semaglutide stuff. I have people, and sometimes it's friends and family, like, hey, have you heard of this? Here's an article. What do you think? And I'm like, I wouldn't put my wife or myself or any of my kids on these things. I just wouldn't do it. The trade-off isn't worth it in my mind because you're trading radical body composition changes and unfavorable ones for long-term health and wellness.
Right. And we don't know the long-term health.
No, we don't.
You know that thyroid cancer increases by like 50%. It's huge. It's something that I don't think we know the true long-term risks yet, but we live in a society that wants, a change right now. They don't want to wait for it or work for it.
Yeah. All right. So we've been talking in and around it, and we kind of get close and then veer away into another topic. So what is the protein sparing modified fast? How do you do it? General guidelines, because I'm sure it has to be tailored for individuals.
Right. And this is my way of doing the protein sparing modified fast diet that I've found to be the best over the 20 years of working with people. I know that there's a few other people that do it much differently, but this is the way I like to do it. Maximum of 3 days a week, you can have a protein sparing modified fast day. And I do have a free calculator if you don't mind me plugging this. It's on my website.
No, I'll put links to all of your websites and anything you want. Just make sure that I have the proper links, and I'll put them in the episode description.
Well, I have a free calculator, and this calculator will give you your keto macros for weight loss. And then it'll also give you your protein sparing macros for weight loss. If that's your goal, like you can do it for muscle building, whatever you want, but 99% of people want to lose weight. And so it'll give you your keto macro days and then your protein sparing days. Protein sparing is a low calorie diet. It's about 800 calories a day. This is why I don't say do it every day, because there will be some metabolic adaptation. Depending on how large a person is, I'll give them how many days they can do it. 3 days is maximum. And like I said, I don't recommend it for someone who's just trying to lose 10, 15 pounds, because they don't have a lot of energy on their body. They're going to be really hungry. But when they have a lot of energy, they're like, I feel great on protein sparing days. Can I do it all the time? My definition is it's dairy free. If you do it my way, dairy free and nut free. So that means no fat-free cheese, no fat-free cottage cheese or low fat, any of that. Because I know some people do that, or whey protein. So, and I usually don't recommend whey for weight loss just because it is absorbed so quickly into the body. It's fine for a bodybuilder or something like that, but someone who is insulin resistant, I don't want to do that. And then
can you pause there for a second, Maria, and explain the link between whey and insulin resistance?
Well, all proteins have a different rate of absorption. This is also why soy is bad. It doesn't signal as fast. So whey protein is absorbed very quickly into the bloodstream. Often see your blood sugar go up with it because it's absorbed so fast. I like beef protein. I have a beef protein powder that I really like and enjoy myself. It's absorbed slower and more evenly. And then there's some that take forever to trigger. Like egg is somewhere in between there. It's more on the longer end, like egg protein. And then you get the pea protein and soy protein way down the line. So it's not great if it happens too fast or too slow. It's fine if it's for someone that's not looking for weight loss or whatever, but
Right.
also the dairy aspect, you know, whey is dairy, and we poo-poo gluten in this keto community, but nobody talks about the dairy issue.
Mhm.
And dairy is a much more common allergen than gluten is. But I think that people are already giving up, you know, the bread and the rice, and they don't want to give up the dairy also. So, and we, you know, we can talk about that later, but that's why I choose, like, meat is like a really great rate of absorption.
Yeah.
So dairy free, no nut flours, no coconut flour, anything like that.
Well,
Um,
you're hitting like all the high points and all the mistakes people make. Like people go gluten free and all of a sudden they become a gluten free baking expert and they're using all these different like almond flour, coconut flour, whatever. And those are not necessarily good choices for people.
I know. Yeah. The thing about nuts is it's a lot of fat and a lot of carbohydrates. And if you think about like animals that fatten up for the winter, they eat nuts that,
Hmm.
that are a lot of fat, and carbs are a great way to gain weight. And that's what
Yeah.
nut flours are.
Yeah.
So that's why I usually don't recommend those. I still have
Right.
desserts. I mean, like they're just different. Like, um, you know, I even have like an angel food cake that's pretty mind-blowing. But and we made a flourless red velvet cake yesterday. It was really good. So it's not like you're eating bark. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and
But
I think sometimes people think that you know if they make radical changes to their diet, which you know certainly from a standard American diet, this is a radical change. I think people who are used to living in that domain with their diet, it's not so radical. But the departure from a standard American diet is, you know, for some people intimidating and a little bit scary, which is why I appreciate the fact that you've put together the cookbooks because that's a tool they can use to bridge that gap.
and my recipes have gotten easier over the years. But I understand not a lot of people like to cook. That's why you get a slow cooker or Instapot, because it does it for you, you know?
Yeah.
But so back to the protein sparing, and then you want to get enough protein, about, you know, 0.1 times your lean mass, and that's
Point
every,
one or one.
what's that?
Point one or 1 gram
Point
per pound of lean mass.
point one one.
One.
Sorry,
Okay. That's what I thought.
sorry if I said point one. And then you know, your keto days would be more like 0.8. That's where I got mixed up there. So, you know, it's more important to get higher protein on your protein sparing days, because you're not eating the fat or carbs, and that's going to keep you very satiated and not hungry. But here's the thing, protein is awesome for building your body, building hair. And that's the thing too. Like women come to me, they're like, I tried the keto diet and I lost my hair and my thyroid suffered. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't eat any protein.
Mm.
You know? Protein is so important for like skin turnover and your hair and your nails and your thyroid, all of the stuff. So, yeah, 800 calories, you know, like on average for like, you know, 120-pound woman, like 100 grams of protein, you know, just to put it simply, and then maximum 30 grams of fat, 20 is better. That's plenty for absorbing fat, mineral vitamins and getting your gallbladder to work. And then carbs as close to zero as possible, but it's hard because even scallops have carbs, liver has carbs, you know, it's hidden, you know, there's some
Yeah,
of it.
you have that trace amount
Right.
scattered
It's
here or
nothing to
there.
worry about. Don't count them. It's fine. You
Yeah.
know, if it comes from an animal, I'm not too worried about it. Um, but then, you know, so that's 3 days a week. And then the other ones will be your keto days. And then I do an overfeeding day. And this overfeeding day is not a Pizza Hut day, but it is, you can have, you know, ribeyes or ribs, or you don't really count calories that day. You just kind of like go with it. But as long as it's dairy-free, protein forward, but it could be those higher fat proteins like chicken wings or ribs,
Hmm.
ribeyes. But that's the thing, like a lot of carnivores, that's all they eat are ribs or chicken wings,
Yeah.
or, and some people are like, but this person is really skinny and they eat ribeyes all the time. It's like, yes, if I eat a lot of fat now, but I didn't to get here.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
want
And so
people,
can we pause on that thought because you know if you look at Like if you were to write down the instructions for the protein sparing approach and compare that to keto, especially the way a lot of people do keto, um, one of the biggest differences is in the amount of fat that you're recommending compared to the standard keto approach. And I'm trying to put myself in your head, and that might be the wrong thing to do, but are you doing that simply because the whole point is you're trying to tap into your adipocyte reserves, right? Because most people have, even a lean person has enough fat to provide what, 60, 70,000 calories. And so if you're eating dietary fat, and if you were eating lots of protein, but at the same time eating tons of fat, you're going to preferentially use your dietary fat, and your body fat is just going to sit there. So is that the main reason for dropping the fat down?
Yeah, your body's really smart. It's much easier. And there's only, one place, really two places for the fat to go, that dietary fat. Most of it's going to go to storage. People think that it just flies right through you on a ketogenic diet. No, you'd be on the toilet all day.
Yeah.
Remember those Wow chips?
Yeah. Oh, Olestra.
Yeah. The average person, if you test our stool, we only lose like 8% of our fat through our stool. Any more than that, you go up a little bit with like those Olestra trips, you're going to have diarrhea. You do not want more than that to go through your body. So this is like, so then where does it go? Mainly it's going to go to your fat cells. And this is the whole fat flux. What was I going to say? Oh, so I hate it when people are like, so what do you eat? I want to look like you. I want to eat like you. It's like, well, to get here, I ate differently. Now I eat a lot of fat because I exercise every day. I love it, and protein is wonderful for, like I said, the hair, skin, nails, it's a building blocks. It's like the Legos of your body, right?
Right.
But it's not a good energy source. It's not a good energy source. Carbs are great energy. Fat's great energy. Fat's a better energy, I should say. Carbs are okay energy. But protein is not. So once you get down to a lean body and you're not eating enough dietary fat or carbs, your energy is going to be really bad. And, it's not a good situation to be in. So that's why I don't like it for people who are already pretty lean to do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, that's the distinction between your approach to fat. Do you put restrictions on the types of fats to consume or to avoid? Because there's this big controversy now out there between the seed oil advocates and the anti-seed oil advocates, for example, right? And there's obviously other types of fats.
I'm not a fan of seed oils. I do think that they are inflammatory. Hydrogenated being the worst. Soybean, cottonseed, canola, they're not flavorful. They're not good. Like, use duck fat, lard, tallow. Because I do send for protein sparing, if you're on like a program with me, we're going to stay away from the butter and the ghee for now.
Because of the dairy.
Yeah. And usually that's the first thing they can add in if they don't have autoimmune issue. But they often find there's nothing better than a tenderloin cooked in tallow. Like, it's just, it has a very high smoke point, so it can get real crispy on the outside. And it's flavorful, and the duck fat and the coconut oil if you want. I'm not afraid of that. You could use avocado oil. I don't really use it. I don't like the flavor. But there's a lot of other dairy-free fats you can use.
Yeah. So do you limit fat intake to that which is found naturally in the protein sources you're choosing, or do you have people add extra fat, whether that's olive oil or something?
For what?
Just to meet their fat requirements, which I know are lower than what most people would expect on a keto diet.
You do not need to add, you do not need to add any fat. You're going to have to probably use more egg whites than yolks, because you're going to get enough fat in there. Like, people don't understand. Fat is in lean proteins also.
Sure.
Like, I remember when I was young and, trying to lose weight, and my mom would get chicken breast from Sam's Club, and I was looking at the package. I was like, why is there fat in the chicken breast? And I'm not afraid of fat now. I just want that to be clear. And I'm not saying, this is why I do have a lot of options, because the way you're going to have success is the diet you could stick to.
Yeah.
And that's also why I have oodles of recipes, including a Pop-Tart, because I feel like, if you want it bad enough, you got to make it, but you can have it. But it's a diet you can stick to. That's what's most important. But it is very effective when someone really wants to see results. I'm like, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll do great.
Yeah. So we've mentioned protein a couple of times, and you've given some protein levels that you recommend. What's the rationale behind cycling the amount of protein on your keto days versus your protein sparing days?
Oh, it's just because on your keto days you have more fat, and it's not that you have to add butter to steak. But you can have like, a steak that has more fat than like a tenderloin. A tenderloin is definitely a protein sparing day. And sometimes people have a hard time hitting their protein goal for a regular keto or protein sparing day. And I'm like, just pick one of my protein sparing recipes, put it into your meal planner, and you'll hit your protein goal for sure. The other meal you don't have to worry about so much. But it's just that, your calories are much higher, quite a bit on a keto day. They're much lower on a protein sparing day. And
yeah,
the volume of food you can eat in protein is infinite amounts than, like, if you have a pat of butter versus a piece of, fish, like the volume is much bigger.
yeah.
So like, it's just, you can have a lot more, you can get away with more protein on a protein sparing day because the calories are so low.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, I totally get that. What's the lowest? And I know that you base your calculations on lean body mass, which I like that approach. And so I have two questions. Number one is, what is the lowest in terms of absolute grams that you would have someone take in, even if they're just a very small, frail person?
A protein?
And a protein. And then the second question is, would you modify your protein recommendations? Let's say you have two different people coming to see you, and one is 100 pounds overweight. So you clearly don't want to base your macronutrient prescription on their current body mass, right? You want to do it on, you kind of feed the body you want, not the body that you have in circumstances like that. Yeah, base it on their lean mass. And so would you give a different number for someone who wasn't 100 pounds overweight? Let's say they had that only 10 pounds to lose, but their primary goal in looking at a dietary approach like this is not weight loss per se, maybe some composition changes, but predominantly, say they have Hashimoto's and they're trying to do that to control their autoimmunity. Do you keep those protein recommendations the same, 0.8 on one day and 1.0 times lean body mass, or would you modify it for that second person?
I would modify it for just about everybody. If somebody has cancer, certainly not going to go that high in protein. I would say don't do any collagen. Like, there's definitely different situations in life where the protein requirement will change. For Hashimoto's, dairy, gluten, it's more about what they're putting in their body and, getting enough protein. So maybe even a little bit more, especially if they want to change their body composition.
Yeah.
Somebody with osteoporosis, I'm going to go way high in protein because your bones are mineralized protein. I have an interesting story. I was running the beach the other morning, and I usually run before the sun comes up, before I start work. And so it's still kind of dark out. And a woman's like, "Oh, Maria Emmerich." And I was like, "Oh, geez." I looked like a drowned. I was like kind of sweaty, wet. And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You changed my life." And she was so sweet. And she said, I needed to find health. And so I started extended fasting. And a year later, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, not osteopenia, but osteoporosis, which is like, the next level.
Yeah, it's here, not it's coming.
Right. And she said, so I changed and I did your protein sparing method because she looked super fit. I was like, I can't imagine you overweight at all. She's like, I was. I said, when I changed to protein sparing, now I no longer have osteopenia or osteoporosis. My bones are great. But that's the thing, like, we think this fasting is this great diet. And I think that there's a place for like cancer, maybe. If I had that, I would do it. But the majority of us, we need it.
Yeah. And so in terms of difficulty, in terms of execution, I think I heard you saying a maximum of 3 days per week. Is that on a week-to-week basis? And if so, for how long?
Depends on how much you need have to lose.
So just until you reach your goals.
Yeah, week to week basics until you reach your goal. Or, if you want to take a break from it. And I would say, like, if you are going to take a break from something, I would take a break from doing protein sparing days, but don't add the dairy in. There's this dude on Twitter and he's like, sorry if I say this, but damn you, Maria, you are right. I finally cut out all of the dairy and the scale is finally going down. And that's all he changed. His macros were the same, calories were the same, but he cut the dairy out and the weight started coming up.
What did he replace the dairy with to be isocaloric?
Fattier cuts of meat and
Mhm.
lard, tallow, duck fat, something like that.
Yeah.
But when people are like drinking bulletproof coffees with butter and cream and this and that, and they tell me that, oh, I fast until 1 o'clock, but they had that. I was like, you just had 500 calories of pure fat. That is not fasting. It's not. I would much rather have you have a steak and eggs for the same amount of calories than drinking your calories.
Yeah, and that, speaking to just the general public, I would like to point out to people that, the human body is designed as basically it's an input-output organism, right? And your diet and what you choose to put into your body is a set of signals that that asks or requires a certain response from the body, right? And this is, one thing I've been thinking about this a lot lately because in the functional medicine space, and I've been teaching functional medicine seminars for, about 15 years now. When new doctors get into the functional medicine world as practitioners, they want to learn about techniques and strategies to figure out what supplements to give people. It becomes a very supplement centric approach. And so the average person who might go to see a functional medicine practitioner, it's very likely that they're going to get a whole list of supplement recommendations with little to no guidance on things like dietary change or lifestyle modification, particularly exercise. And I want to come back to the exercise piece and get your take on that in combination with protein sparing. And so, I guess one of the messages I would like healthcare consumers and functional medicine clinicians to get is, listen, diet and lifestyle are, to me, those are far more powerful than nutritional supplements. That's not to mean that supplements aren't necessary or desirable in certain cases, but if all you're doing is taking the latest supplement or even something that's crafted for you individually, but you're not changing your diet, you're not optimizing your lifestyle, particularly the exercise piece, you've got your pyramid upside down.
I love supplements, but I tell them, if you don't do this food plan, don't waste your money on those supplements because they're going to do nothing for you.
Yeah, it's almost like we've forgotten what the word supplement actually means. It means in addition to, right?
I mean, some of them are going to help you to sleep better or whatever, which will help you eat better. But if you're not going to do the diet, do not waste your money on these. Like, this is first for sure.
Yeah.
And you only need to do this. This is like, obviously I deal with a lot of, postmenopausal women that are really low in progesterone and estrogen, and food's not going to heal that, which I really don't like when some carnivore experts say carnivore heals everything. I'm like, we get older, like we're going to get wrinkles. We're going to get like, that's not, like people are very hard on my husband with his autoimmune issue. And he's like, I did not cause this. Stop. Like, I cannot get rid of it at this point. I can, manage the issue and it's not progressing, but like people think that
remission and cure are not the same thing.
Right. So
yeah, and that's something that we have to trumpet all the time with, just with people, is because they expect cure, and that's, no one knows how to do that yet. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to do that. But so back to the exercise thing, because I know that you're very physically active. I know you love the outdoors. I love that picture that you posted social media, maybe a couple of months ago. You were talking about, I think you're talking about hunting.
I'm a bow hunter.
You're a bow hunter. I'm Canadian born and raised. I actually got my U.S. citizenship this year, so I'm a dual citizen. But yeah, thank you. And we spend every summer back in my home, which is Newfoundland, Canada. It's the East Coast, and every September I go moose hunting with my dad and my brother-in-law, and usually one of my nephews. And so, but I've never ventured into the bow hunting aspect of it. It was just never part of my upbringing. So I appreciate the fact that you're not just like, all you have to do is fix your diet. I mean, lifestyle is an important part of that as well. And diet can do a lot. It can't do everything, just like exercise can do a lot, but it can't do everything. So how do you approach, or do you even do that, or do you leave that to other people? Because I know you have a background in exercise physiology.
Yeah.
So how do you approach the thing? Like, do you have certain people say, okay, your capacity is so low, we're not doing anything but maybe walking up until a certain point? Or do you have an approach that you like people to use and you just like just stick with it until it kicks in and you're okay?
Well, first of all, I want to say moose is the best meat I've ever eaten. They eat aquatic, so it's like super delicious. And
It
I was
is.
I was on a carnivore TV show, and I helped these participants with their lifestyle, and they invited me to hunt in Newfoundland to hunt moose. And I was
Oh,
like,
where did you go?
I didn't go yet, and I
Oh, you
told my
haven't.
dad, 'cause I don't gun hunt, and I told my
Okay.
dad, would you bow? Because he has hunted moose, and
Yeah.
he's like, I wouldn't bow hunt moose.
It's very, because they're very skittish, and usually when we get an animal, it's usually 200 yards plus.
All
I
right.
mean, it's not like you can't do that with a bow, but
Yeah. They have
yeah,
them in their yard. Like they're always texting me pictures of the moose
yeah,
because
no,
he grows alfalfa, and it's really hard for, I guess, I don't know. Deer love alfalfa. They just have a lot of animals.
sure,
Anyway, here's the thing about exercise. Do you remember having to run the mile in the school?
yeah.
My mom remembers I tried to break my leg so I didn't have to do that.
Oh gosh,
That's how much I hated running. And now it's like where my best ideas come from and all that. Do I make my clients run? Absolutely not.
yeah,
And finding these amazing studies of people that just, if they don't want to exercise, just stretching alone will help maintain their muscle so they don't lose that as they're losing weight. So if they don't want to go the protein sparing route, just stretching will help them to keep that muscle while they lose fat. So it doesn't have to be going to the gym. I hate the gym. I lift weights here because I get to watch whatever I watch. I don't have time to watch TV, so I watch a trashy show and I just lift some weights and laugh, and it's enjoyable, right?
yeah,
You have to make it fun. You can't
yeah.
do stuff you hate. If it's dancing, dance. I'm a terrible dancer. I love to paddleboard. Like it's just, and moving after meals is also very important for blood sugar. And it doesn't, if you're like, it's winter, vacuum the house, or clean the kitchen, or even making a meal. Here's the thing, like people, they don't want to cook and they don't want to clean, but but they'll go to the gym after work and run on a treadmill, which sounds like hell to me. If they would just walk around the grocery store, get the groceries, turn some music on while they cook dinner, and just move their body, you're going to burn pretty much the same calories, you know?
So is a starting point for you, especially with people who are more metabolically deranged, is a starting point for you to make sure that their NEAT, their non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is where it needs to be before you start adding exercise? Is that an approach that you either do or you would think is a good idea?
Well, I do want to say, like, I have situations where they can't exercise. Like
Yeah.
my husband can't move his body. It's just the way it is. Like so I work with them that way. And I'll probably say before exercise, I address sleep. I think that sleep is more important than that. And I do tell people, if you are waking up an hour earlier and getting an hour less of sleep to work out, don't do that.
Yeah.
I think sleep is more important because if you look at, even if you eat the same foods, but you slept 4 hours versus 8, your blood sugars are going to be much better on the days that you ate or slept 8 hours,
Yeah.
even if you eat the same thing.
Yeah. And we have many studies that show just a single night of sleep deprivation leads to increased insulin resistance for a period of, like, I want to say 18 hours, which is
It's
significant.
It is.
Yeah.
So I would say I addressed that. And then, depending on their abilities, whether it be stretching, yoga, like finding something that they do like, but I do want them to find some sort of strength training. And Like I said this on YouTube we did a live the other day. I said 5 minutes is better than nothing.
Yeah.
10 minutes is better than 5. And that's how I look at it with my life, because sometimes like everybody says, oh, I'm too busy to cook. I'm too busy to work out. I'm like, you're not busier than I am. Like, stop. Like we homeschool children. I'm working with celebrities. I wrote 4 books in a year. Like, you're not busier than I am. Like,
Yeah.
just get over it.
Yeah.
But
That's a lie that you tell yourself.
yeah, but it's easy to not pick the weights up when I'm really busy. I
Yeah.
got 5 minutes. Who doesn't have 5 minutes? Just
Yeah.
feel the burn, do some bicep curls, feel the burn. And I don't have fancy equipment here. It's a very small place. But I have a few things and an ab roller, like it just, and
Yeah.
I used to hate working out. I hated it. And
Yeah.
now when I don't do it, it feels like something's, because I do it in the morning. It feels like something's off in the day.
To anybody out there listening who thinks that, stopping and doing something for 5 or 10 minutes is pointless because it's only 5 or 10 minutes. Earlier this year, I did an interview. We did a 2-part series because we ended up talking for like 3 hours. His name's Marty Gabali. He's a PhD researcher up at McMaster, and he's one of the key researchers in the world in high intensity interval training. And I believe he coined the phrase exercise snacking. I might be wrong on that, but if he didn't coin it, it was one of his very close colleagues. And that's, to me, I love that mental imagery. Like if you can't take 30, 40, 55 minutes, whatever, if you have 10, do something in that 10 minutes. It will make a difference.
It will. And it's more powerful to do a few different bursts throughout the day rather than 1 hour all at once. So if it's exhausting and like an hour, I don't have an hour, just do like 10 minutes and then later do another 10 minutes. And having your heart rate go up and down like that is in the long term much better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things just talking about the podcast, I've been talking lately about developing VO2 max and zone 2, zone 5 training and the impact on longevity. It's not just longevity. It's like you said earlier, I can't remember how you said it, but the way I say it, I quote, there's people listening to the podcast are going to get tired of me saying this, but Ashley Montagu is a British American philosopher. He's not alive anymore, but he's the guy who said the goal of life is to die young, as old as possible. Right. And what you said earlier, if I remember correctly, is like, it's not, I don't want just to be old. I want to be old and capable. Right. I still want to run on the beach and bow hunt and, whatever it is, the stuff. I mean, that's really, it's another way to say it is adding life to your years and not just years to your life.
I'm more active now than I was as a teenager or in my 20s.
Really? Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
I don't know. It doesn't feel like I make myself do that. I just crave it. Like if I have a bad day, we all have bad days. We all have sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of reaching towards the box of cinnamon rolls like I once did, which never made me feel better, I found things that truly made me feel better.
Yeah. And one of the big differences is that it makes you feel better for longer.
Yeah.
And once you get over, they say embrace the suck. Once you get over that initial, oh, this is hard, I don't really like it, the sense of well-being that carries over. And in particular, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're talking about diet and how important that is, but when you run those two paradigms parallel and you're optimizing, and let's say even 3, you're optimizing your sleep, you're optimizing your exercise and activity level, and you're optimizing your diet. My gosh, how powerful is that?
Super powerful. Like exercises and was my antidepressant. I didn't want to take them. And sure, food changed that for me, but exercise still just like super dopamine surge for me. Like I just love it,
Yeah, it's the one that consistently shows in the literature to be effective in treating depression, right? Get up and move your body.
And I do feel like even having a mirror, if you want to start lifting weights, having a mirror and seeing yourself get stronger, don't think of it as vain, because there really is a signal going on in your brain that gives you that high. So it's not that, you want to stare at yourself, but just seeing yourself get stronger is much more powerful than just doing it in the kitchen and not seeing yourself. So just, I don't know, put that out there.
Yeah. I'm watching our time here, and I want to be respectful of yours. I appreciate the time you've been able to give me so far. What's the craziest transformation story that you have in all the work that you've done?
I have a couple. One of my favorite body transformations, her name is Twyla. Um, I have a certified keto coaching program, and she's now one of my coaches. Um, but Twyla, she lost 274 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she was at the point of her
And
life.
what do you know what percentage of that was lean mass versus body fat or vice
I
versa?
don't. I don't, but I do know that, she's moving her body like she never could before.
Oh, of
She wouldn't
course.
even go to the grocery store because if she needed to go to the bathroom, she couldn't fit in a stall. Like
Wow.
little things like that you don't even think about. And, she couldn't clean herself or anything. And now she's just fit as a whistle or whatever you want to say. And I'm gonna probably have to have another interview, but she was on the cover of Women's World magazine,
Hmm.
and it was just interesting. She did protein sparing days. She knows that when her weight creeps up, she has to cut out the dairy because it will come back in, but then she just cuts it out, and because this is the thing, like some people hate the scale, but if you don't weigh, and I'm not saying that it says everything about your body composition, all of a sudden 50 pounds go by and it's a lot harder to lose 50 than it is to lose 5.
Sure.
So just kind of keeping that. So she keeps an eye on the scale, and if it does go up, she cuts out dairy for a week or whatever and gets back down to her happy weight. And she's just a blessing. She has a lot of excess skin, but she does not want to get rid of it because there's a lot of side effects and things like that.
Hmm.
She's like, these are my war wounds. She's
Mm.
she's just an awesome person.
What was the time frame that she lost the 274?
I can't remember at the moment now. It
I
was
mean, we're
fast.
not talking like 3, 4 months, right? We're talking a year,
No,
year and a half.
year and a half. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
over a year. I know that. But I did have someone lose 170 pounds that I'm going to post on my Instagram in 1 year, a woman. And, it's just people don't think that it's possible. Like, oh, you only should lose, so many pounds. But when I don't know, when you're so sick, reversing it is important. And you're eating good food but my favorite non-weight one is her name's Kiki. And I used to go to the gym to lift weights. I would do body pump. I don't know if you know that class. And there was a woman in my class. I didn't know who she was, but she always wore a bandana and she didn't have any eyebrows. And she came up to me. She said, Maria, I want to hire you. I have alopecia and I heard you could help. I heard you had some testimony. So she was a professor. She came to my office and it was like September. And so she didn't come to Body Pump anymore because I would go during the day. And she kept in contact for a while, but then she just went away. In May, she comes to Body Pump class and she's wearing her bandana. And she starts crying, walking up to me, and she takes her bandana off and she said, Maria, I had my first haircut in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like food is powerful. I didn't give her any supplements.
Yeah.
Biotin is not going to help your hair.
No, no. Yeah. And, I have on a fairly frequent basis, ladies asking me, what can you do for hair loss? And my answer to them always is, if I could figure that out and bottle it, I'd be a very rich person, you know,
Yeah,
different things for different people.
right. Protein,
Um,
protein,
protein,
protein.
protein. So what is, and maybe we can end on this and we can talk about some of the, like your online community and some of the events that you've got coming up, but what are, let's do two things. Who shouldn't do a protein sparing approach? And the answer might be it's for everyone, as long as it's constructed well. And what are the most common mistakes people make? So let's start with, is this for everyone, or are there certain people who should be cautious or shouldn't do it?
No, it's not for everybody. If you are, lean already, because some people, I was at a conference and they're like, Maria, I tried protein sparing and I was miserable and I felt awful. I was like, you were so lean. Why would you even try that? And they were exercising. And I was like, don't, you can still exercise if you have a lot of body fat, but she didn't have a lot of reserves. So if you're already lean, pregnant, I wouldn't recommend it, children,
Yeah.
you know, you're growing.
Just the sensible stuff, right?
Sensible stuff, right? the biggest mistakes on the ketogenic diet,
No, on protein sparing.
protein sparing would be dairy, even like lean dairy, low fat dairy, and doing it too often, too much. They're going to have some metabolic adaptation. Like, if you do it every single day. Alcohol, not sleeping, like, the typical things.
Again, sensible stuff.
Right, right. But like if you're stuck and that's not working, getting your hormones tested and different things like that, because you might be, might not have any estrogen, no progesterone, no testosterone, and you're miserable. Like food is going to help some, but it's not
Yeah.
going to fix those hormones. So like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons people don't feel well, but food is one of those easier answers to change.
Yeah.
And most people
Yeah.
save eating this way. I'm just going to say that. Don't say that it's too expensive either, because you're not snacking. You're not eating, the junk.
Yeah.
That's
And half the week, your calories are maybe half of what you would normally consume.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I know that you've got multiple websites. I'll put websites to your Mind Body Health.
Thank
You're a keto adapted. I know that you've got some coaching certification programs. Is that for lay people? Is it for people who already have some kind of either like a health coach certification or healthcare practitioner credentials? Like who should be or could be interested in your coaching certifications?
We'll say people around the world are doing the certification. It could anything from a nurse is doing it, a functional doctor. I had someone who was a functional doctor, but they're like, I still need to know more about cholesterol and why I shouldn't, the statins, and like they still needed to know more. And
Yeah.
that's what we're about. It's just my husband and I, we teach you everything. We have meetings, so they can feel confident about not harming their patients, about cholesterol or what markers to look at, what supplements should you not take with blood pressure meds. Because I certify people in supplements if they want to add that on, but there's a lot of, don't take potassium with blood pressure meds, or like, when to take magnesium if you're on blood pressure meds, different things like that. And then, there's some people that just like Twyla, she had success, she wanted to do it. But then there's some people just that are great cheerleaders, because that's what people need, is a great cheerleader. They want to talk to somebody. They need someone that is going to motivate them to get off their butt in whatever way that works for them.
Yeah.
So it's anybody.
Good. And I know you have a keto retreat coming up. What's that about?
Yeah. Somebody asked me like, hey, Maria, we should go to Italy and like do a keto, like, explore Rome and everything and do it keto. And I was like, what? I don't have a passport, I never thought I didn't think I could afford to travel. Right. And so, I did have a passport. I'm just kidding. But we do these retreats. So whether you're keto or carnivore, whatever your dietary needs are, they'll be met. But again, I'm not a judgy person. So if somebody wants gelato, I don't care. Just don't peer pressure me into it. But we're going to I'm going to Thailand in March, Portugal in May, and Italy in September. So it's
And these
cool.
are all retreats, or are some of these events that you're speaking at?
No, you get to travel with me. I teach you anything you want to know. It's like having a personal consult for 8 days, right? We go to dinner together, breakfast, we go see the, Coliseum together. We have all of these, we went surfing. Like I was in Bali this last year, we went surfing, or actually I was the only one who surfed. Everybody just watched me and laughed. We rode on elephants, like we just have fun. It's just a fun vacation. And what I love is I go alone, and I want people to be like, if you don't have a friend to go with, don't worry, because I don't have anybody either. Like,
I think that's such a great idea for so many different reasons. But one is like my wife and I this year, we've been on 3 vacations, 2 cruises, including 2 cruises. And these are the first cruises that we've ever been on. And so you take people and then you take them out of their environment. You're traveling, and most people will assume like you can't follow a diet when you're traveling.
Yep.
Like, yeah, you can if you know what your choices, what your options are, and if you're dedicated to the outcome that you're pursuing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I love it because you're showing them like this is how you do it.
And I usually like miss my family when I travel for events that I speak at. I don't miss them because I'm just seriously like think about who's coming on the trips. They're like fun people. They're
Yeah.
not, I just have so much. I never laughed so much in my life. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah,
That's
don't come with your
fantastic.
family. Come with us. It's super fun.
All right. Any final words of advice before I let you go?
No, but I do think that you should have my husband on and talk all more about the science. He'll take it to another level for you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that for sure.
He is a scientist, so yeah.
Got awesome. Well,
Thank you.
Maria Emmerich, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and shout out to all of your listeners.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.